Hey everybody, Dave here. Thanks so much for tuning in for another video. You know, for the longest time I thought about what it would be like to have a set of downriggers on my boat so I could do some deep trolling for fish like stripers and such. But if you've ever priced them in the store, they can be quite expensive. So I got to thinking, you know what? I think I can build a set. So today is all about how I built this set of professional looking downriggers that'll do the job that I think, for me anyway, and maybe for you as well. And I'm going to show you exactly step by step how I built it and the design, all for around $45. Okay, so let's jump in. I'll show you everything you need for this build. First off, I have some 250-pound braided line, and I'm going to be using the braided line because it's less likely to make noise in the water, and it's also a lot cheaper than the wire. And I'm going to be putting links in the description below for all these certain things, such as this pulley. This is a stainless steel 20 pulley that is going to be on the end to hold up our weight. You're going to need some 1/2 inch washers. I also have a 1/2 inch by 1 inch long spacer. And you're going to need some plate like this. This is 3/16. This is going to be for the mounting bracket, and I'm also going to cut it and use it for the handle arm. Then you're going to need some 2 inch by 1/4 inch flat stock, and you're going to bend that in a U and drill some holes in it. This is one I've already started on, and I'll show you exactly how to do that in a little bit. You're going to need some 1/2 inch round stock and some 3/4 inch round stock. The other thing you're going to need is a pulley. Again, I have the link to the description below for this pulley. You want it with the spokes, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So with most of that out of the way, let's jump into it. Oh, one more thing you're going to need is a 1/2 inch long piece of pipe. This is 45 inches. I cut this to start, and if I need to shorten it, I will take it off the one end. So let's get started by first bending this pipe. And then we'll bend our U for our pulley holder, or actually our reel holder, and we'll go from there. Now the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure from the end of this pipe up 14 inches and put a mark there. Right like that. Now we're going to take it over to the bender, and I'm going to bend this at 80 degrees. Now if you don't have a bender, there's other ways you can do this. You can heat this up and use a conduit bender, and it'll get you pretty close. Or you can just keep working it a little at a time. You can actually cut the pipe, at 40 degrees, and then just flip it over, and when you could weld it and have an 80-degree bend. So there's a bunch of ways around it. So let's jump on the bender and see what we can get happening here. So now this is a Harbor Freight bender that I have access to, and it's in my shop here. So what I'm going to do is utilize this. This is a 2-inch die. I want the inside to the inside of the bend 2 inches. And if you don't have something like this, you could heat it up and bend it around a piece of pipe or anything that's close and just adjust it later. So I'm going to start off, line this up, and I'll leave this stick out about 8 inches. I'm going to cut it off when I'm done after the bend. Alright, with the bend portion in my saw, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it off from 6 inches from this side of the blade to the end of the curve here. Now if you don't have a cut-off saw like this, you can just use a wafer wheel on a grinder and it'll do the same thing. Now I'm going to measure in from the end here 1.25 inches and put a mark, and then I'll center that up on each side, and then I'll punch it with a center punch, and then I'll do that on the other side, take it over to the drill press. Okay, now we're going to drill this through. We're going to drill one side then the other, and we're eventually going to wind up with a 9/16 hole in there, which is this bit. But we don't want to start there. We want to start with a 3/16 and keep working our way up, maybe over 4 or 5 drill bits till we get to this. That way it'll give us a nice hole, it won't chatter, and make it kind of oblong. So let's put this one in and we'll start drilling. Okay, the one thing you want to make sure of is that these are parallel, that they're not open or closed in. You want them to fit in here fairly snug. Now, the way this is going to work is we're going to start by putting your rod in here. We'll go into the pulley, and then we'll put the spacer on the other side like this. Now, this rod was a little tight, so I just actually ground it a little bit so that this would slide on here real easy. And this is going to go right through the other side like that. So that's what it looks like, all in there. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut these off now. I'm going to weld a handle on here, and we'll put a cotter pin, a washer and a cotter pin on the other side, and that'll keep the wheel in place. There's also a set screw right here on the wheel that we can tighten down to make sure it isn't going to go anywhere. What I'm going to do is tighten it down, take it apart, and then I will drill that a little bit so when the set screw goes in, it just doesn't put pressure on this rod. It actually goes into the rod a little bit and really locks it up. Now I'm going to measure from the end of the pipe up 7.5 inches, put a mark there, and then I'm going to place this centered on that mark, just like that, and give it one tack weld. I want to make sure it's on the pipe. I'll give it one tack weld, and then I'll square it up and give it another one over here, line it up this way, and finish it off and weld it up. Okay, that's tacked up now, and that's how the wheel's going to set right in there like that. Let me go do the other one, and then we'll weld these up. So the next thing, now that we've got everything welded up here, is to put on our end caps for our pipe, and also drill a hole in here in these end caps to accept our pulley. So I'm going to take a piece of 3/16 stock, and I cut this 3 inches long, and I'm going to cut it in half at 1.5 inches right now. And to do that, I'm simply just going to use the grinding wheel on the wafer wheel on the grinder. So with the 1.5 by 1.5 inch piece cut, I came up a little bit in the center and I drilled a 1/4 inch hole. That's going to accept the S hook to carry our pulley that's going to hold up our weight. Now what I'm going to do is lay the pipe on top of here and weld it up. Then I'm going to grind all the edges to smooth them out and make it look nice. So in our next step, what I'm going to do is I'm going to place this 1/2 inch rod inside this 1/2 inch pipe. And as you can see, it fits pretty nice. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to weld a bead around this, slide a 1/2 inch washer down, weld the bead on that. But I want the beads, the washers, and the welds on this side. This is the part that goes to our outrigger. And this is going to set onto another pipe like this till I can turn it. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure all the welds are on top so that the washer is flat, gives it a nice surface to turn. It's when they come and mate together. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to chuck the downrigger in my vise and set a piece of rod in there. I'll probably use about a 7-inch piece or so, put 3 inches inside the pipe, weld it, and then 4 inches will set out the bottom. And it'll just slide in like that. I'll put a bead around it, and we'll be good to go. We'll start assembling the mounting bracket. Now they have the shaft welded on there. I flipped it upside down and put the washer on top, dropped it in the vise and tightened it up. Now I'll run a bead all around there. So I've gone ahead and I've made up 2 of these mounting brackets. These are going to mount on the side of my gunnel, and then the 1/2 inch rod on the downrigger will drop in here, and that way I can turn it any way I want. The next thing I'm going to do, these are 3 3/4 inches long, these pieces of pipe, and they stick up about 1/4 inch, about 3/8 of an inch or so above the top of this plate. That way I can make the plate flush with the gunnel and the washer won't scratch anything as it moves around. The plate here is 6 inches long and 4 inches deep, and I've come in 1 inch from each edge and put a center mark and drilled out 4 5/16 holes. I'm going to use 1/4 20 bolts to attach this to my gunnel, and that'll be plenty. So right here I've come into the center and I've put a center punch mark here, and I'm going to drill and tap this out for a 1/4 20 bolt, and I'm going to weld this small piece of 1/4 inch stock on that for a T-handle so I can turn it. That way I can adjust it any way I want and tighten it up very quickly. The size bit I'm going to be using here is a 13/64, and that'll accept a 1/4 20 tap. Now I'm tapping these out because the pipe is a real heavy wall. It's like a 160 schedule, so I'll be able to do this. If you're using a thinner pipe setup, then you'll probably have to drill a bigger hole like a 5/16 and weld a nut on top here and just use that with the bolt you want. So I've gone ahead and welded the nut onto some 1/4 inch rod, and what I'll do now is I will measure over the same distance on this side and cut it off. Then I'll repeat the process, and I'll have 2 handles for my downrigger. Okay, this is what the finished product looks like. You can see this can turn freely. All we do is just a little cinch, and that's locked in there. I've used a 1/4 20 by 1/2 inch bolt, just a standard bolt. I'm not worried about it rusting and stuff. I can always take them out and retap it in the spring or whatever I want to do. If I break it off, I just re-drill it out and tap it. Not a big deal. So anyway, I didn't see a lot of need to use stainless on everything here. Plus I wanted to keep the expense down. So there's our mounting bracket. I have the other one done as well. So let's move on to the next phase. I've done a mock assembly here of what this is going to look like. The crank handle will be on this side. And one of the things I thought was very important to have on this is I intend to use the crank handle to lower everything and raise everything. But if it should slip out of my hand, that weight will get this wheel spinning very quickly. So what I did was I came up with an idea to put in a emergency brake on this. And I won't be using this to lower the weight or anything. I'm only going to be using it for an emergency brake. And so what I did is took a piece of 1/4 inch round stock and brought it up here and bent the handle like here. Then I took a piece of 1/2 inch square stock and welded it onto the 1/4 inch round stock. And then fastened it all to here. There's a bend here, right here, so that I got a little bit more welding area than just a spot weld on there. And now if this wheel gets, you know, out of the way, I can just push on it and lock it in. So it's just a safety feature, but it's something I felt was important to add. And I'd encourage you to add one as well to yours. It rides up about 1/8 of an inch above the wheel, so it doesn't interfere with anything until I need it. And again, I'm going to be standing next to this, so I'll be able to put quite a bit of pressure on this in a couple seconds and lock everything up. Then I can grab the handle and adjust things as needed. All right, we have one more final thing to do, and that is to put our lock in here. When we crank the weight down to where we want it to go, we want to be able to leave it hands free and make sure this reel doesn't move on us. That was the reason for adding or making sure that you got a wheel with spokes in it. And again, I have a link in the description below where you can get this exact wheel. And the reason for that is we're going to be drilling 2 holes right here, and then I'm going to slot them out to make it even easier. And then what will happen is all we have to do is take a piece of 1/4 inch rod. This happens to be just a driver bit, but it'll suffice to show you what I'm going to do with it. And all I'm going to do is when I get to where I want to go, I just put it across, drop it in the slot, and when the wheel comes back, it'll lock. And that'll keep everything right where it needs to be. When I'm ready to reel again, I just slip it out, reel, put it back in, let it lock. And really simple. And I'm going to have this on a cable that'll attach right to the arm here, so I'll never lose it. I can't drop it in the water or anything like that. I'm going to just come and bend a little loop in the end and attach it with a cable. Pretty simple design, but very effective. Okay, let me show you how I make the locking rod. This is going to go across and through the spoke in the reel portion that holds the braided line, and this is going to lock things in place when we're done cranking the handle. So what I'm going to do is, and I'm making these just random, but whatever I do on one, I'm going to do on the other, so they're identical. I'm bringing this across about an inch, about 2 inches from the edge here to the edge here, and I just put it right to the edge of that piece right here, right about like that. And now I'm just going to bend this in a U, just like that. So that's what it looks like. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and I'm going to put it in here, and I'm going to lock it in against this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this edge even with the face of this middle bending rod right here. And then it's just a matter of bringing this around like that and closing it up, making a P. Alright, I'll put a little tack weld here, although it's probably not even necessary, just to keep this closed. I'm going to run a cable through this so I don't drop it in the water. Now I've already made one over here. It's going to look like the finished product. I put a little bend piece down so that it can't wiggle its way out. This P is going to hold things down because the weight is going to pull it down. See, it automatically wants to go down, and so then this is going to stay down, so it can't lift up and come out. It can't just slide out, you know. It has this little bend in it to keep it in. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to match these. I'm going to lay one on top of the other, put it in. See where that one fell? Right there. Slide this one out, put that one down, give it a little bend. Match it on top here. A little more. Right there. Okay. Now I'll just cut that off. Put a mark there and cut it off. And those will be done. Okay, for the handles, I'm making this very simple. I've cut a piece of pipe here that's about 5 inches. And I'm using a 4-inch by half-inch bolt. And this is what's going to go through the pulley, the spacer, and all that. And what everything's going to rotate on. So I basically just took a piece of 1.5 inch by 1/4 inch thick bar, and I cut it to 5.5 inches. Now I'm just going to set this on here. I'll come down about 3/4 of an inch, and I will weld that all up. Then I will weld the pipe on the other side. I'll flip things over and weld the pipe on here for my handle. This will be my crank, and this will be the center shaft. So let me go ahead and center this up, measure it out so everything's good, and I'll put a bead on that and then flip it over and do the other side. Now that the handles are welded up and cooling, the final step is to create this S-hook. This is going to slide into the top of the boom, and then this pulley will then go on the bottom like that, and then I'll close them up with a pair of pliers. And this will keep everything, moving freely. It allows me to make sure that everything hangs properly from the end of the boom. So I took a piece of 3/16 stainless rod, and I just bent it in an S-hook like this using my bender. You can bend this around a piece of pipe, put it in a vise with a small piece of pipe or round stock and bend it around that as well. But once I slip everything together in the final stages, I'll just bend these shut with a pair of pliers, and that'll be good. So I initially gave everything a coat of regular gray primer, and now I'm going to be using this Ace Premium paint. It is paint and primer, and this is black. So this is going to be the final color on this. I'll probably give it 2 coats of this on top of the primer, and then we'll call it done. So one of the things I forgot about was actually putting on the rod holders. Now, this is an optional thing. If you have rod holders on your boat that you can utilize in conjunction with the downrigger, that's great. I wanted to make all one piece. So what I did was I cut some 1.5 inch flat stock about 2 inches long, and the same thing here. I made 4 pieces, and then I took some 1.5 inch pipe, schedule 40, and I just cut this about 7 inches long. And so this is going to be my holder. Now what I did was I offset it. I didn't put this right in the middle of the pipe. I offset it so this edge was in the middle of the pipe. And I did the same thing for this. As you can see, maybe you can't, this edge here is the center of the pipe. So when I put it together like this, when I bolt together, this pipe will be right in the center of this pipe here. And this way I can make this adjustable any way I want and just tighten up the bolt, and that'll be my rod holder. So I just finished up welding these, and now we'll get ready for touching up that paint, and then we can assemble everything. So during the assembly, what I did was I put the crank on, put a washer here, slid it through the holder, another washer, then I slid the wheel on. I tightened the set screw on the wheel fairly tight, and then I turned the wheel against the handle, and you can see the 2 marks in the outside of the set screw. So right in between here, I want to grind a small flat spot so that when the set screw tightens, it can't slip at all. So if I don't do that, it could still slip on the round part, but with a flat spot there and it's seated right on the flat spot, it can't move. So I'm just going to hit that with the grinder, and I'm going to make it 12 o'clock from the handle. so I know where the flat spot is. That's it. Now we can go put everything back together. Okay guys, let me go over the build here and show you exactly how things go together. Now what I've done here is, if you remember, I ground that little flat spot on top of the shaft that goes through here, the bolt. And then for doing the assembly, all I did was I put a washer on the outside here, one on the inside. And what that does is it brings the space over of this wheel so that it lines up pretty well with the upper pipe right here. And then on this side, what I did was I put the 1-inch spacer and then another washer and a locking nut. The locking nut works really well because it allows me to create tension on here or back off as much as I want without worrying about the bolt vibrating back through. If I put a locking nut on there, I couldn't do that, or a lock washer rather. And then on the top here again is the brake, and so what I do is I hold up on one hand, push down on the other, and that slows the wheel down, say if the crank handle would get away from me. This is the locking pin, and as you can see, it goes through the spoke, locks on the other side right there, and I put a 3/32 cable, and I just took some double furrows and just smashed them so that they won't be coming back out, and looped them over top here of the rod holder that I have in place. I set that angle how I wanted it and tightened those nuts down. Now, as far as the weight system goes here, and this is a weight I made. If you're interested in learning about how to build this exact weight, I'll put it in the end card. I'll have a link to that video showing you how I built these for about $7 a piece. These are about 9.5 pound weights. And so what I do is I just swing this back out when I'm ready to deploy. I take the weight off like that, let it swing back down, right like that. And for every crank on this handle, this weight will drop or raise 18 inches. Once this is filled up with the braid like it is, I measured it, 3 cranks is 54 inches, so it's 18 inches, or roughly thereabouts, 1.5 feet per crank. So that way you can calculate how far down you want to lower your weight. You'll know where you are in the water. Now, as far as the line on here, what I've done is I've put a 50-pound mono underneath this braid, and I've used only about 20-30 yards of that. The reason for that is so that I would eliminate any slippage on the wheel here. If I just put the braid on, the braid's pretty slick and it could actually just slide on the wheel. So by putting the mono on first and then joining with a uni to uni knot, this isn't going anywhere. And so when I come down, I've also put 2 releases here on the weight. This one here is a bimini release, and it's fully adjustable right here. So you can fine tune this for very, very light fish. And then on this one here down the bottom, I've added a hook for a rubber band release for fishing, say for stripers or something like that. So I can use either release, or I can use them both in tandem. So guys, there's the build. I hope it was helpful to you. You know, when I'm ready to go, if I need to change locations, all I do is I bring this up, hook it in there, swing it back, even with my gunnel like that, tighten the screw on the inside, and I'm good to go. The only other thing I want to just say is that I originally designed this to be mounted just on the side, the inside here, and what I did was I welded another piece of plate on top here just to give it more rigidity. Utilizing both the side and the top of the gunnel, it really stiffened it up. And so I just ran in a bunch of 5/16 lags, but before I did that, I drilled them out with a 3/16 drill bit so I'd have plenty of threads to grip. And so that's the build. Hey, I hope that video was helpful to you. I hope you got some ideas from it, you got some tips, and hopefully you'll build a set of your own. They really weren't that hard to do. Just took a few days, and as I worked through stuff, because it was a new design, I had to figure things out, but it came together. The weights on that and the downrigger are designed to work together as a system. They're designed to be in relationship. One isn't really a whole lot of good without the other. And that's the same way it is with you and I and God. Whether you realize it or not, we were designed to be in relationship with God. Now you might be thinking, why would God want to have a relationship with me? Well, the fact of it is, plain and simple, He loves you. For you and I who've had children, it didn't take anything for them to do to cause us to love them. I remember my kids when they were born, something special about each one of them. And I longed to have a relationship with them before they could even talk or walk. They didn't have to do anything to prove who they're worth to me. I loved them for who they were. And God loves you for who you are as well. I'd like to encourage you to, if you've never thought about having a relationship with God, to move in that direction. If you're not sure how to do that, I've written a book called Growing Deep. It's free. It's in the description below. And it'll walk you through a little bit about my life, a little bit about the scriptures, and it'll share with you more specifically how you can have a right relationship with God and how you can walk with Him on a daily basis. When you begin to understand just how much it is He loves you, there's not a whole lot in this world that can deter you from having joy in your life. So guys, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. If you've liked our content, I'd really encourage you to take the time, subscribe to our channel. And we've got a whole lot more videos like this one coming out. And, make sure when you do, you click that bell so you'll be up to date on all the videos and you'll be able to watch them as soon as they come out. Thanks so much for joining me again today. Please remember, God loves you more than you could ever know. So until the next one, don't forget to get outdoors, and God bless.